Alright, y'all, so today I wanted to make a very quick video kind of talking about some new updates that we've been getting in regards to the David case or the ongoing criminal investigation involving the singer David. Obviously, we all know, right, in this a vehicle registered to his name, the black Tesla, they found a child's body in that was decomposing and possibly chopped up by the name of Celeste, and she was like a 14-year-old child at that time. She would have been 15 if she was alive. So that being said, I do think in this case, I've already made a few videos about it. This case is really disturbing. It's just really disturbing and really just too many weird red flags in it. Now, in terms of updates for this video, we don't really have too many. I do feel like we're getting to the point in this case where we're reaching a little bit of a saturation point, which what I mean by that is, all the information that's currently online that people are able to find, because like I said, it's not just me. There's been tons of people investigating this case. Is pretty much have been found and released, right? I mean, at this point, we're waiting on the police to say any kind of statement about this case because the LAPD has been really, tight-lipped about this thing, have not said anything. So like I said, really just waiting from official sources on this case, to be honest with you. That being said, there's some few updates I want to get into real quickly, so let's get into them. So the first thing is there was a video going around where David was performing. I think this was around August of this year, and he was performing, I think it was August, or it could have been a little bit prior. I think it was at the beginning of this tour, possibly, but I'm not sure. It could even be last year. But he was performing a song, and people are speculating that kind of in this booth above the stage. It looks like a VIP kind of booth, like a seat that only high-paying VIP members get. People are speculating that there's two people up there. One of them is David's younger brother, and the other one looks like some kind of a Hispanic woman with the curly hair, and apparently has some has a black tube top on, and I think jeans. And people are speculating that this could be Celeste. Now, I did see the video for myself. I will say this, there is a lot of things in that video that look similar to the victim in question. I wouldn't call it with 100% certainty, though, that's Celeste, just because it is a little bit of a grainy video. You really don't get a good look at that person over there in the far back because she's kind of surrounded by darkness in the VIP booth. So it really is hard to tell. It could just be a woman that looks similar to the victim in question. I really don't think this is like damning evidence. I mean, it looks suspicious, absolutely. I mean, that person there looks similar to the child, but, like I said, I really can't say with 100% certainty. If that is the case, I do think this whole thing would line up, and we have seen alleged videos of her backstage on his tour from last year, or I think earlier this year. So it's not out of the question, but I'm not gonna, necessarily say with 100% certainty on that. Now we have some other pieces of juicy information I wanted to talk about that are really more damning and crazy. So the big thing is the Sun, which is, I believe, a news outlet. Take everything they say with a grain of salt, by the way, but they apparently asked a neighbor who lived near David's residence, and basically asked him, hey, so did you ever see David, kind of around the residence, and did you see the victim in question? And he apparently did. Now, he apparently reported to this outlet that he got back from a trip or something a few weeks ago, and didn't even know what was going on about the situation. But he said that for the past few months, like in the past summer, he has seen David and Celeste together. He said that after seeing photos, they were able to identify the people that he saw regularly around the residence. They apparently weren't chatty. David was purposely not really chatty with the neighbors, not really liking to talk about anything. And I guess that struck him as a little bit odd. I don't think he even knew who David was, the singer, to be honest. I think he just assumed apparently that they were just some couple, some kids, like 18, 19-year-olds. Of course, he said he had no idea of the whole situation, the fact that she was a minor. My quick thoughts on this situation. Also, a little bit that what I also want to mention as well, to add on that, he apparently didn't speak to the police for whatever reason, though he did say that another neighbor did speak to the police, which is interesting. That being said, my thoughts. Now, this is all alleged information. The guy who reported this to the Sun, take everything he says with a grain of salt. He didn't even give his name, so it's not entirely sure if this is even 100% accurate. But that being said, that's crazy if this is true, right? If someone like a neighbor, for example, is able to identify the victim and the suspect in question before the time of death, that's really, I wouldn't call that circumstantial evidence anymore. Like, you can say that's circumstantial evidence, but if you have this guy, for example, and he wants to testify to the court that he saw these two people together and that he knows what he saw, that's some pretty strong evidence, man. And it's not looking so much, better for David. It looks really bad. The victim, and the child being there at the residence, seeing them outside together, oh, man, that's really bad. It shows even more of a direct connection in the photos and all the other alleged evidence we've been seeing online. Not looking so good. I'm really hoping he can report his information to the police, but like I said, I'm not sure what's going on with the LAPD investigation. Also, some other big news. Apparently, the victim's remains, the child's remains, were returned to the family, and there's been a lot of speculation about the family. I haven't made too many points about them in my last videos, but it's a pretty big news, right? The remains were returned to the family. And this only means to me that the coroner's office, the medical examiner, are probably getting close to done. They're basically getting close. Like, it's getting close to basically having an autopsy. Excuse me, can't speak today. Released to the public. Just because if they're already done with the remains, and they've already done all their investigation and evidence gathering, I'm sure they're still figuring out a cause of death, or if they can, to be honest. That being said, this is like I said, this is a sign that we might get an autopsy soon from the medical examiner. It might get finally released to the public. I'm not saying with 100% certainty. I'm not even saying this week it will be released. It might not be released. But that being said, I think this is definitely a sign that it's going to get closer and closer to an autopsy being released. And obviously, a lot of this criminal investigation stuff is really depending on an autopsy. From what I heard, the LAPD haven't apparently made too many moves because they're waiting on an autopsy and a cause of death, which I guess that's what's kind of stopping everything. And it's obviously a lot more difficult because the body itself was apparently decomposing. That being said, we'll have to wait and see of this whole situation. Wait and see if an autopsy is released to the public, which I'm sure it is. But that's some pretty crazy news and maybe a sign of things to come. In terms of other information, there was a store owner that apparently spoke to some news media, and he said that he knew the victim in question. She was like a kid. She would do a lot of kid things, right? And it's so sad that her life was taken away so soon, right? Apparently she would go in, buy Takis and drinks and other things. She said that apparently there's a surveillance video from the store that shows her apparently walking to somewhere and I guess getting picked up by David's Tesla, which was the black Tesla. Now, all this is alleged. He spoke to the sister of the family, and I guess they got this information reported to the police. Just more signs, man, right? I said more signs that this person was definitely involved with this victim, this child in question, in a romantic relationship, or at least at the very least. Why are you picking up minors, man? Like, at the very least, you definitely had a close relationship. Just more bad things. I'm not exactly sure if it actually shows, but it definitely shows her going somewhere. So definitely gonna be interesting to see what that's all about. And there's been some other information, like people have been talking a lot about David's alter ego, which I'm sure has a factor in it. I mean, I don't know what it is with people that get arrested, they have alter egos. I mean, YNW Melly had an alter ego, Melly, Melvin. I'm not exactly sure. I mean, I don't think it's damning evidence. I think a lot of it's very circumstantial and that stuff. When you analyze his lyrics, I'm sure there's a dark spin to it. But at the end of the day, right, I do believe in creative expression, so I don't try to look too deep into that stuff, but people have been kind of trying to connect the dots. But I'm not really going to do that. But I do think it's an interesting thing to note, at least to an investigation. And yeah, I mean, other than that, I think there's really hasn't been too many other crazy details that have been released about the case. The biggest thing that kind of happened was Charleston White, one of the kind of an interesting hip hop commentator, mentioned that he believes David was innocent, and his reasons are actually not half bad. Like I said, he mentions the fact that the police haven't made an arrest. They've apparently have all this circumstantial evidence, and people have been held for less evidence than David has, to be honest with you. And the fact that he has been walking free, there has to be something more to this case. And I do, in a lot of ways, honestly believe that. I think this case is bigger than maybe what's perceived online. I think there's a lot more people involved. I think it's a bigger conspiracy than what's being reported online. But at the same time, I do feel like this guy is going to get arrested. It may take some time. I'm sure the police are gathering evidence. Sometimes police processes take a long time. But I personally think with all the circumstantial evidence, with all the things I've been building up against this guy, I personally believe he's going to get arrested. I'm not going to say it with 100% because it could not happen, right? But like I said before, I think they're going to have to at least say some kind of official statement about this case at the very least and figure out who's actually the perpetrator. Silence is not going to help anybody, and hopefully the police will say something officially. But yeah, that's my quick thoughts on all the updates on this whole situation. Such a disturbing situation, a disgusting situation. My condolences to the family and my condolences to the victim. And yeah, all right, y'all, that's the end of the video. Hopefully you all have a good day, and peace, y'all.